we're realizing we were never meant to live like this. On the clock, on a schedule. Our mindset is shifting. Our intuition is being activated. And just breathe. We're opening up to other ways. We are going within for our answers of rest and peace. We are finding joy. So open up and let's revolutionize your mindset.
Welcome to Intuitive Shift, where we sit down with awakened, like-minded souls who have shifted in their own lives. I'm so excited to be joined with Tyler Kiwala, co-host of Journey to Truth, but we're going to kind of do something different. This is what I like to call the intuitive view, where we just sit down and just have a chat about some things that are recently going on in the world, some things, some changes that are happening, and we're just going to look at it from that intuitive lens. So, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I have to point out first. So, if you guys ever notice, I wear this necklace a lot. So, Tyler's dad, Jim, made this for me. It has labradorite in it. I absolutely love it. I wear it for almost all of my readings now. I love the energy, and I know that Jim put energy into it. So thank your daddy for me for that. But I got this at your conference, which you're having in May in Grafton, Illinois. I'm so excited for that yet again.
Yeah. So we can't wait. I'm really happy. It's our fourth year. I can't believe it, to be honest, our fourth year doing this conference. And this year it's we're already like selling way we're as far as ticket sales going, like this year's gonna sell out. I like bigger than it has been. I just feel it because the trajectory, I don't know why, but it just seems like, people are kind of flocking towards it. So we're excited about that. It's going to be a good year, and we still haven't even finalized all the announcements and stuff, but it's going to be our last year in Grafton for now, and we're moving to a new location, which I can't wait to announce. And but until those details are solidified, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, so I won't say anything publicly about it. But yeah, it's a big deal, and it's we're trying to expand from going to just a standard conference to something that's going to be more of a interactive retreat type of event. Is going to be a conference slash retreat type of thing, because that classroom setting is kind of getting old.
Yeah.
You go and sit there in a chair all day and listen to the speakers. We rearranged the schedule this year, so it's a little less stressed for everyone. And we're just trying to really focus on the energetic side of how we can, appeal to the shifting times, as we transition, getting out of that classroom education style setting, I think is important.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's all about, especially 2025. It is everything I receive from all of my guidance higher self team is it is now all about action, coming into that actionable state. Like, we've had years and years to absorb all this information. Now it's time to start doing. Two of your speakers, Sherry Divbend and Lori Van Tyne, and myself, we are hosting a retreat and an immersive retreat the end of February in Jupiter, Florida. If anyone wants to sign up for that, it's awakenandalign.net. But yeah, it's all about, okay, let's start getting like our hands dirty. Let's getting in there and start like workshopping this out. But if anyone's been on the fence, like I'm not surprised this is your last year in Grafton, but also a little sad about it too, because it is such a very magical, beautiful, beautiful area. Energetically, everywhere that I go, I feel out the energy. I've always felt very relaxed there. And it's impactful. So we had Craig on 2 weeks ago on the show, and it was all about his experiences and our experiences at your conference up in Grafton and how much it can shift and change you. Just one moment of experiencing something that maybe in that moment you don't really know where to place that in your brain, like in the cognitive, but you feel it in such a subconscious soul way you're changed forever from that moment.
Oh
And so
yeah.
we were just, and again, like that's how we shift, right? That's how we begin to have those shifts. So yeah, Craig and I were discussing that. So if you guys, anyone's on the fence, please go, especially knowing this is the last year. Um, Beautiful, beautiful facility, amazing people, amazing speakers this year. So definitely
Mhm.
go. What's the website again? Just why we're here.
Journey to truth dot online. And
Okay.
And we do have every intention of coming back there and doing a like another like a reunion conference type of thing. So it's not we're not like walking away for good, but it's time energetically to just kind of relocate and to do something just where personally I'm being called and it's feeling really good. So it's just the right move right now. So
I love it. I love that. And you and Aaron always have my full support always. So just let me know what you're up to and we'll have you guys on again. I can't
yeah,
wait.
yeah.
Um, so the reason why I had you come on, and first off, happy early Merry Christmas. We are gonna kind of get into that because this is gonna air before Christmas. Um, we were chatting in, I made a post on social media about the Matrix. People are beginning to see these timeline shifts, these Matrix movements, and I just wanted to have a sit down chat with you because you've been having a lot of experiences lately where things are shifting, and I would love to just delve right into that. So first off, when we say the Matrix, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Like, what are we talking about when we say that?
It's like it's an illusion, the illusionary reality that has been overlaid over our entire existence, what we're born into. And it's not so much a place as it is like I think I read this in a meme somewhere. It's like a trauma bond that we have with this false reality, and that bond like perpetuates this illusion. And it's like we're creating it ourselves because of the beliefs that have been programmed into us. And we don't really have an option. We don't have a choice. When we come here, everything is, there's only one path laid out for us. Like, it's not like a kid, well, maybe shifting now, but it's not like a child is born and has an option on how they want to pursue life. They really don't. Their option is laid out for them. You go to kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, like the whole schooling system. That path has just been the only path if you want to be considered successful and if you want to believe that you have any chance of making it in this matrix, in this world, and that's the avenue that you're given. Children aren't given an option, and that's the biggest issue right now. And I think that that is shifting big time. So as far as this whole matrix goes, like we it's been such a solidified thing because our beliefs create our reality, and it has been the consensus reality for far too long now. And the awakening is obviously shifting that, and we're breaking free from that. So it's going to look different from everyone's own through everyone's own lens. It's going to look different for everyone. But as more and more wake up, it's that hundredth monkey effect, and it does affect the collective consciousness, and it's a new consensus reality, and that's the Great Awakening, the Golden Age, that this positive timeline where we realize that we actually have a choice. We don't have to do things the way they've been laid out for us. It's like when you go on vacation to these tourist sites, and it's like this pre-packaged vacation that you have to do. Like I don't even care about that anymore. It like that part of the Matrix is boring to me. Like I want to go in the woods. I want to go off the beaten path. I want to go explore this land and go to areas that we've been told that we can't go. And I think this whole illusion of the Matrix where we couldn't do these things and the path was laid out for us in these pre-packaged vacations, like that's all fallen away. And as that changes, we're beginning to see these glitches in the Matrix because it could be looked at as a simulation or a holographic reality or a virtual reality. I mean, there's so many ways to describe it. And because it's really interesting. I've found, I was like, why does everybody always describe it as a simulation? Because when you really break it down, the best analogy we have is a computer program. And it's
Yeah.
like we can go into that whole conversation if you want, but I'm like, that's not by accident. Like we have collectively realized that, oh, like the only thing we can liken this to, if we really get philosophical about it, it ends up being compared to like a computer program. Like you have this blank slate software that you can upload these different programs into that create like a Sims type of reality. It's all very similar. It's like, so you have to start asking yourself these deeper questions. But and then that's when you start, getting into questions about what the matrix actually is, and if we created it, if it was created for us, or if our collective beliefs create it together. So.
Yeah. I always, one of my great analogies that I liked because it just rings true for me is, I know this movie gets a lot of hate and I don't know why, because I actually really like it, is the Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds one.
Hmm.
And the whole, the message of that movie is you're only limited by what your own mind can create, right? So
Right.
he could not create. I mean, that's what the power of the Green Lantern is, right? Of that ring, and your thoughts create what you need. And the very beginning, he was thinking very small and very limited, and so he kept getting beat up in these fights, right? But then by the end of it, when he realized, oh, I can create something even larger than the sun, right? I can create this boomerang. It saves him. But the whole point of it is that you are what your mind creates, and we are limited by our own thoughts and beliefs.
Hmm.
I was playing a game. One of the things that I love to do is I love to play games within the matrix to see where I can like get it to glitch or get it to move. And the girls and I, and I've said this before in other podcasts before, but the girls, my daughters and I were in the car and we were playing with it, right? And so we were like, well, I want to see this because we were just bored at a stoplight. Well, I want to see this car. And my one daughter, she's like, well, that's too easy. I'm gonna go like really big. She's like, show me a car that is so different. I want it to have stripes on it. I wanted to have it, be a really different color. And 15 seconds later, this blue van goes by, and it was like the oddest color blue. And it had where it looked like somebody had sliced it and it rusted out. So it had rusted out stripes all going down the side of it.
Hmm.
Right. So this is how, when we put the thought out there of like, this is what I want to see, whoop, then it manifests right in front of you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing could be said for the other side of that coin, and as far as problems go too. We can create our own problems that same exact way. And it's all tied into the limiting beliefs because those act as chains that hold us down to the matrix, right? And so most of the problems in your life, like it's not even a crisis, but it is a crisis if it challenges the limitations of your belief system. That's why it actually becomes a problem because it's challenging what you perceive as possible in the first place, and it creates this tension, this resistance, and you don't understand what's happening, so you can only label it as a problem, but it's actually not a problem. It's trying to teach you something. It's trying to help you break free and expand out of that limited thought process. And a lot of even globally, like the political issues that they throw in our face, like that is all limiting belief system issues. I mean, it's so surface level, like these low level war tactics and propaganda. I mean, it's like, come on, like I can't believe people are even falling for it still, but some people are, and that's who they're catering, that's who their target audience is, right? And they're gonna just keep, wrangling in everybody that they can, and until we just finally shift out of that frequency entirely. Can't talk this morning, but um yeah, it's really interesting to think about like how anything in your life, whether it's happiness, abundance, or or a problem, is all created by your own beliefs
Mhm.
and the limitations that you've given yourself subconsciously, really.
Yeah. It's interesting to, when you're talking about these low level wars that are going on, when you break out of that, when you just break out of the illusion, and I do think the illusion is just the best picture, right? Because that's what they've been doing. It's almost, so when I read, I'm on X every day. That's where, like, that's what I'm reading. And I almost like kind of like have my little arms crossed, and I feel like I'm looking down at an arena now.
Hmm.
And once you break, it's almost like that's where you go from an energetic standpoint, like, oh, so what are they going to try to do in the arena today, right?
Right.
Where are they trying to move the needle? Or like I've been watching Gladiator, right? So which which war are they trying to recreate now? But the thing that gives me so much hope is I instantly, like, see the headline, then I go into the comments, right? Because I just live in the comments to see, like, I want to get the needle thread, right? Where are we at collectively? It is not working anymore.
No, people are seeing through it for first of all. I mean, they're delusional. I mean, I'll just say it. Like, unfortunately, the people that have been placed in power are delusional sociopaths that have been groomed into being that way. It's not even their own fault. They're born into these families that, these political families, these royal families, and they don't really have it. Like, if we don't have a choice, they definitely don't have a choice.
Mm.
Like, they have to conform or they're like ousted. They're not part of the family, right? And there's a lot of mind control and stuff that grooms these children into being the political puppets that we see. And so it's not even, I don't even want, I wonder sometimes, I'm like, these people don't even know that an awakening is happening on a
Fine.
planet. Like, they're really that far removed from anything because they have like sold their soul essentially and they've been just puppeteered for so long. I almost wonder if they have an awareness of what a great awakening could mean and what is happening. And that's why we see these meltdowns because it's been like, we can get into the conversation of entities and stuff controlling these people, but no one's known. Like, the problem is that nobody knows who they are. And a lot of these people in power have never known who they are. And we arguably none of us have, but and the middle class and the people in poverty probably have a better idea of what it means to be a pure soul than the people who are just born into these, rich families. So it's really interesting to look at it that way. And I don't even remember where I was going with this whole thing. Oh, as far as like identifying like how it's just not working anymore. I saw this article. Two U.S. Navy pilots shot down over the Red Sea in apparent friendly fire incident, U.S. military says. And it's talking about basically, I could just go, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm like, this is a total war propaganda headline. And, it's over enemy soil and all this stuff. And they're going to throw friendly fire at us, which we know is a cover story. And I'm just like, everyone picked it apart immediately. Immediately, everyone picked it apart. Like, that's not what happened, you know?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
there's no chance that this stuff, there's no chance anymore that any of this stuff sticks. There is a small percent that really haven't like broken free from that. And, they're the ones who take the bait and whatever. Like I said, that's the target audience.
There was a video, oh gosh, I think this might have been a month ago now. I have issues with time permeates, but it was an explosion. And they're trying to say it was like a nuclear explosion overseas, and it was instantly broken down. They're like, from people who works in weapons, and they're like, that's CGI. That didn't
Right.
even
Yeah.
happen. Like, it's
Right.
because they were looking at the shadows and the reverberation of the things around it, and we are, and I think that's why it's so imperative that we are really working on, and it's really important for like conferences and workshops like what you're hosting and myself is hosting to intuitively open up to discernment, because we're coming into a place of CGI and advanced AI where we're really going to have those skills to be able to, because energy doesn't lie, right?
Right.
CGI does AI, but energy doesn't, and we need to have those skills to be able to feel into that. Because I
Hmm.
remember even just looking at that, because I fell into it, I'm like, there's no energy behind that. Like, that
Right.
didn't even happen, and then I scrolled down, I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all catch ourselves falling for something at some point. I mean, we always like, those hyper sensational headlines, they work sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I've scrolled across something like, oh, but I've learned to pause and reflect and look at it and like the energy doesn't lie. But if you have a society of people who have been mind controlled and manipulated away from their intuition and away from being able to ever identify deception or read energy, then obviously they're the ones who are just going to believe the headline. And because what they do is they manipulate everyone, like I said, away from your intuition, away from your gut feeling, and not even knowing who you are anymore. So you're completely in your mind, and they bombard you with all this information, conflicting information intentionally to confuse you because the devil thrives on confusion. But I mean, that's how it works. So when they can have you confused and in your mind, they have you, then you're not even self-aware. And if you're not self-aware, then you're literally a zombie for the system that they've created. And then you'll even fight to protect that system that's enslaving you. It's like this whole crazy thing.
It is. There's some people that I tell you, if you're at this point, I've had a couple people that have reached out and they're trying to figure out how I've gotten to this conclusion in life, right? And some of this was about politics or whatever. And it's almost to the point where I don't even know where to begin to make make it understand, because it goes like 20 years of research went into understanding
Hmm.
why what we're seeing right now we're getting, and it makes sense to us and we get excited and we have no fear, like, oh, okay, we can just watch this, right?
Right.
I don't know where to even send some of those people to even start, because it's like, oh man, like this is going to take some time,
Well,
but they want it in 5 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
They want it. First of all, yeah, they're looking for instant gratification. But um, that's a great point you just brought up, because it's impossible to sit here and like give somebody the whole elevator pitch and the whole, cabal and what's been happening on this planet, because it just doesn't work that way. Like everyone has to come into it on their own. And I've been saying this for years, and it still stands true. And it's becoming even more apparent with, Robert F. Kennedy and this whole make America healthy again, this shift. I've been saying forever, like if you want somebody to like start waking up, help them recognize the poison that they're putting into their bodies. And once they really start like realizing that this is why they're sick, and it's nothing they're doing wrong, they're just kind of been lied to, and these approved ingredients are actually literally poisons. And once people see that, then that inevitably leads to the next step. Well, why is that allowed? Well, why is this allowed? Then that sends them down the rabbit hole. If
Mhm.
they're and there's no way to turn back once you start seeing it. So you can always start with health, because that immediately affects the person, the individual, if they care about themselves. Some people don't give a shit. They just want to eat whatever tastes good, you know?
Yeah.
And but on day one, Trump and Robert, they both said that they're going to divorce the United States from the World Health Organization, the WHO. And people are flipping out. They think it's like he's good. He's a dictator. We knew it. He's Hitler. People don't understand that's the best possible thing that could happen to us to make America healthy again, because the World Health Organization has actually they've had our health in mind, but are not to make us healthier, to make us sick and keep us sick. And that's what's been going on for way too long now. So I think it's a beautiful thing when we see that headline and we get excited, but I can understand why somebody would see that who's not aware and like, what do you mean you're divorcing the United States from the World Health Organization? Like, oh
Mhm.
no, he's trying to kill us, because it can very much look that way, and it's going to be painted that way too. And that's why it's important. But I mean, I don't even think we started talking about what we were going to talk about yet.
No, that's all right though. I love it. Everything is it's this is why I like the intuitive view. This is just what I want. I want to talk about the things that are going on right now. I I did a channeling toning last week for a private audience, and what was coming through, and actually part of it came through, I think over a month ago I did something with Lily Nova, and that was coming through. Again, they were showing that we have a chakra in the back of the head, right? And
Hmm.
so we're used to this to the seven chakra system, right? That's what the basic everyone knows. But this chakra, we've always had it, but it's really coming in line with a lot of people. And so what was they were showing me is a lot lately people are feeling like a pressure, almost like a throbbing, almost like feeling off kilter, a little bit wobbling, and they're saying that's because so many people are being activated in this chakra. This is like the star chakra, right? So the crown up here, connection with source. This is more like this is what they call like the star chakra. But what they're showing down here, it's almost like this is where like all the download, like the true downloads, but it's like your inner wisdom, your inner knowing this, right? So we're stepping truly into a place where everything that we've trusted has always been outside of us, right? All religions are all outside of you. Information is outside of you. And we're truly coming into this space where this is inner wisdom. Everything is coming within what the soul already knows. And what they're saying, and there's another aspect. This was the point of the whole message was they gave me the metaphor. I work in metaphors. So they're showing like the thick bark, right? When you think of a tree, and it's like, and they said this, the slicing away of the bark from the tree is happening, right? And when
Hmm.
you take away that bark, that tree is so beautiful. It's soft and smooth, and it's a much lighter color than this hardened bark outside.
Right.
And they're like, it's so uncomfortable right now because this bark, like, what does a bark do for a tree? It's so hard and rough because it's protecting the tree, right? Because
Right.
it can weather the storms and the winds and everything. And our energetic bodies have been built, and we have built them too in this matrix to weather the storms of this thick, denser energy.
Right.
And so where we're going, we're literally like peeling back this hardened bark, almost like a hardened heart, right?
Yeah.
And that is so uncomfortable. I mean, so for years now, they've started with like the expansion of the brain, making more room in the brain and the gray matter of the brain, separating that. So that was a lot of the headaches and the confusion and the memory loss and all that. And then we moved into a place where a lot of people, everyone, like the heart, they're having heart palpitations. Why am I having all of this this chest pain? Like all the colds that were people out, the bronchitis, the pneumonias, all of this in the chest because we're having like this chest expansion, the heart chakra is expanding. And so now this is starting to becoming activated. And what that's doing is we're moving more into the light body, coming into this like smoothed out, more light bodied era where we're
Right.
finally trusting the inner wisdom, the inner knowingness. And this is all connected with that matrix, right? Because we're starting to clearly see the matrix as for what it is,
Right.
and
Right.
understanding the they're saying like dimensional time traveling, that actually they said time movement, the movement of time. And so
Yeah.
I kind of want to segue now into what we were originally going to come on here, which is it's about these timelines. I shared a video with you earlier this morning, and it was called, they labeled it quantum immortality,
Yeah.
which I love that. And this video was this essentially this woman had experienced something 2 years prior, and she still like has active memory of it. Somebody had passed in her life, and people were texting, clear as day, remembers it. And then, but jump years later, yesterday, that same exact event happened as though it had never happened before. And she said, I'm trying to make sense of why this person who apparently I know he died years ago, this woman suddenly died yesterday.
Right.
And she recalled she had a car accident where a drunk driver hit her. Her car was completely mangled up, and both the hospital and the ambulance driver said you should have died. Like, and she said I didn't have a scratch on my body.
Yeah. Yep.
So she posed the question, did I jump into this new timeline?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I would love to know your thoughts on
I
that.
think that's happening to so many people right now.
Mhm.
And time is coming into question. I was just at Five Below shopping the other day for my niece and nephew, and there are books they have there all about consciousness. I'm like, what is happening? This is crazy. I mean, Bigfoot, the encyclopedia of the, unsolved mysteries, Atlantis, Lemuria, all the stuff, UFOs, aliens. And then there's a book about time and understanding how to manipulate time. I'm like, what? And it's just a book about teaching you how. I flipped through it, and it's teaching you how like time flows differently based on your mood. And like, and the page I went to was like, if you're in a good mood, time moves faster. That's why it's always over too soon. But when you're in a bad mood, the work day sucks and your day drags on because your mood, like your time is malleable. And it's a whole book that explains that. And but ultimately you start have to ask deeper questions than what time is. Even I don't know what the book, concludes, what its conclusion is, but I thought that was amazing. I'm like, this is the thought patterns here that we need to start, hopefully they catch on anyway.
Yeah.
And so we understand that time isn't even what we realize. So whenever these things start happening, like to this woman, that happened to me. Like the same thing just happened to me. And what was I going to say? Oh, so in October, I had this whole like near-death experience, and I kind of walked away when I don't feel like I should have, but there was some people who had my back, and there was also like divine intervention. You could say it was a miracle, right? Well, a couple months go by, and I finally decide to watch this movie John Carter that my friend had recommended to me a number of times. Like he had pestered me about watching it. So I finally watched it. It's about John Carter's a Disney movie where this guy he goes into this cave and finds this piece of technology that teleports him to Mars. And he always told me to watch it. He's like, this reminds me of like the secret space program stuff and whatever. So I finally watched it and I texted him. I said, hey, I finally watched John Carter. And then he never responded. And I'm like, oh, I thought he would have been excited, you know? So then when I saw him at dinner like last week, I was like, "Hey, you never text me back about I watched John Carter. It was awesome." He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "I had to look it up." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I've never seen that movie." And he's like, "Is this it?" And he pulled up like some other movie that wasn't even the same movie. And I'm like, "No." I'm like, are you joking right now?" Like, or I can go into the whole back and forth,
Yeah.
but he adamantly had never seen that movie, never remembers having a conversation with me about it. I'm like, "You literally told me it was your favorite movie."
Yeah.
And like I was like beside myself because I have full on memories. I can even remember like hearing his voice and the way he told me about the movie and all the stuff. I'm like, I would have never even watched this movie if you didn't tell me about it, you know? And he finally watched it. He watched it the next day after that. And he's like, I've never seen this movie. And I'm like,
Oh,
dude, if I needed evidence that I shifted timelines whenever that thing happened to me in Springfield, in October, then that was it because I don't know how that's possible because I have an entire series of memories over a period of time, not just one occasion, and that just are no longer relevant anymore to this timeline I'm on now. So there's something happening, you know, this whole Mandela effect thing, and we can get into that, but time is a deep conversation.
oh yeah. So I what spurred this on was I had made a comment that I don't even enjoy reminiscing about my past anymore with family members because a couple weeks ago I was with my sisters and I brought up a memory from when I was a teenager. And this is a very specific memory. And my sister remembers it very differently. I mean, we were about ready to throw down in a store over this
Right.
because I it was a very specific thing and she's like it never happened that way. And I was back at my parents actually in October and I found my old senior year yearbook and I opened it up and I was reading the messages that some of my friends had written. I was like I was appalled at them because I don't, they were inappropriate, but I could not believe that I had never written these before. Like they would never write that to me. Like I cannot believe this is in your book to the point where I was so freaked out. I put the book away. And a few years ago, I was moving and I stumbled upon my childhood diary. So I'm saying this to everybody listening, go check out your diaries because I only wrote in it maybe 15 times, 20 times. And it was one of those because it was so small, I would like reread it all like maybe once a year I'd find it and reread it. I had a little Snoopy diary.
Mhm.
And I was reading it and while the event was the same, the details were all different. And it was
Mhm.
like, well, I remember, Natalie saying this, but in my diary, Amanda said it. It was like
Mhm.
to the point where it was so freaky. I was so freaked out. And it was like 1 in the morning. I was reading this. My husband was asleep. I took my diary and I threw it across the room because it was like, I'm in a completely different timeline.
Right.
And I knew
Yeah.
it. It is such a bizarre, freaky experience when
Yeah.
you're confronted with it.
Yeah, I know it, and it's so easy to talk about the Mandela effects. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that differently. But when it happens to you on a personal level, it fundamentally shifts something within you. And I understand now why people flip out when they notice the discrepancy. I had the same thing happen to me with a Metallica song. One of my favorite parts changed, and I matter of factly like remember the old way. And same thing, I remember even like rewinding that part in the car with my friend. We used to love the guitar riff, and the riff is different. And I'm like, what? Like, I was so upset about, like, I'm like, not only is it like this weird, confusing thing, but I'm like, don't tell me like well, some of my favorite things are going to be stripped away from me now, you know? And it's just really funny because it's paradigm shifting. And, you know, I had the same thing. A friend of mine, in high school, he was like this bully, right? And everybody kind of knew he was that. that was his role, right? And he would come into the common area in the morning and like lay on the one of the benches and take up the whole bench and like continue sleeping until the bell rang. Like he would just and like whatever, it was this whole thing. And somebody had a grapefruit and they dared me to just throw this grapefruit at him while he was sleeping. And I felt bad. Like I didn't want to just like throw it directly. So I just like, okay. And I threw it over my shoulder and it hit him right in the head. And he got up and like came after me and like basically bullied me for the rest of the time in high school. And I saw him years later at the gym and I finally said something to him. I apologized. I was like, "Hey, man, I know it's been like a horrible relationship between us in high school, and I'm sorry for like throwing that grapefruit at your head." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, and I explained him the whole memory. He had no memory of it at all. He's like, "I
Wow.
literally don't know what you're talking about." And I'm like, this whole time, like my whole teenage, young adulthood was like shaped from this experience. And he
Yeah,
has no idea what I'm talking about. So I
that's
don't know
great.
what's going on, but
Yeah. I'll go back to how you were discussing time a minute ago and how I love in the book where if you're happy, time moves faster. Have you ever played around with time purposely?
maybe. I don't know. I mean, I probably have.
So so I will playfully challenge. I don't really like the word challenge, but playfully suggest. There you go. I'll playfully suggest to anyone listening, play with time. So I once again, I've mentioned I struggle with time permeance. And so what I mean by that is my my ADHD, which I love always dial to high dimensions because my brain like works on 1,000 miles per hour. I will not realize like, oh, I have like 45 minutes worth of stuff to get done. Oh shoot, I have to leave in 10 minutes, right? So I started playing with time and I will I will take a minute and I will say, I need these 10 minutes to stretch and actually feel like 45 minutes.
Oh
And
yeah, I've done stuff like
yeah,
that.
like I
Absolutely.
slow time down and then I can get everything done. And I've even done it, sometimes I wake up, if you wake up before your alarm or you can't fall asleep or, and it's like, oh, I have to wake up in an hour. I will look at that hour of time of which we register, and I will say, I need that hour. I need my body to slow down and it to be experienced as 6 hours.
Yes, I do that. Yeah, apparently I do play with time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah. So I just playing with time. But if anyone here hasn't done that, just try it. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can warp time if you're going to be late somewhere. You can arrive early. I mean, weird things can happen whenever you just believe you can manipulate that time, reality. And the same thing, I'll do the same thing if I can't fall asleep one night and I know I got to be up early, and I'll just be like, for whatever amount of time I end up sleeping, if it's 2 or 3 hours, allow my body to receive the rest of 8 hours. And sometimes I'll have my best feeling days after that. And I only slept for 2 or 3 hours. But if I don't set that intention, I'll feel like crap. But when I do, like actually set that intention and call that in, it can fundamentally change your next day. And like, you're like, oh, wow, like I feel great. Maybe I should keep doing that more often, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's funny too, because you can have all this knowledge, which, like we know how, but it doesn't mean I do it all the time, right? It's sometimes
Right,
I forget that we have access to this. Because it kind of goes back to, I was talking to my daughter about this the other day about like why, and my son too, like why sometimes people might stay in a trauma environment or they might stay. And it's like, well, it's the devil, right? You just
right.
fall into those patterns and those rhythms that you're so accustomed to. But when you actively use your mind to shift it and break out of it, then it's amazing what you can do.
Right. It's the devil, you know, exactly. It's like that comfort zone. I mean, that can be a trap. You know, they say life begins outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So I believe that, but that's why it's important also to have these conversations as reminders because
Mhm.
we mind wipe ourselves every day. We blank slate ourselves. Like we don't even realize we do it. We can have the most amazing thing happen to us. And before you know it, we've been distracted and pulled 18 different ways, and now we've forgotten about it. and quite literally to the point where like, what did I even eat yesterday? Like we just because like we're not focusing and being present. And
Mhm.
it's really interesting. Like I think if you can slow down time like that and actually be present,
Mhm.
you'll start to notice and experience and perceive these beings in these other dimensions and these other realities that are always there, but you're so distracted you're walking right past them or looking at your phone or whatever. Your eye is on the prize wherever you're going instead of being present and actually just perceiving and feeling your environment around you.
Mhm.
It's really interesting, like when you slow down in that regard, like what you can start tapping into. And then they're like, oh, you start seeing through this veil, right? Or maybe it's not even a veil. Maybe you're just raising your frequency or awareness so the veil isn't there anymore for you as much, because I think the veil could arguably be, we could say that it's created by our beliefs, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like like we interviewed somebody, Julia Marie, she said there is no veil. It's created by our beliefs. Like once you change that perspective, then it seems like the veil is thinning, but your frequency has just shifted and you're perceiving into this other dimension essentially.
Absolutely. Everything that I think that you experience is you can have it by mental effort, by just calling it in. Um, I was at the airport and I can very easily just go into an airport, get on my plane, get my travel ban over. I was bored. I was flying by myself. and, and so I said, I want to show me the NPCs, show me, I want to
Mhm.
see people for who they really are, because I know some of my friends they don't have that control, and sometimes they really see some gnarly stuff when they're at the airport. And so I said, I want to show it to me, like show it to me, show me real people. And I lasted for about a minute and a half, and then I'm like, yep, nope, don't want it, because you realize I saw coding on people, some people,
Mhm.
um, definitely like just a cold, absolute soulless bodied person walk by. And then there's some people, then you do, I could feel into, and I saw like the silver cords coming out, like, okay, they have a beautiful soul purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nope.
no, that's true. I've had the same thing happen to me. It was a session, an Akashic Records reading I had through Leah Ray, and in the session, it was like kind of showing me or helping me remember that I have this ability to like take the glasses off, like the movie They Live, right? Or in that sense, put the glasses on. But um, to see everything as it is and people for who they are. But it came with this strong warning, like you might not actually want to see. Like you might not be able to stomach it, or you might be disillusioned, demoralized, whatever, if we actually see things for what they really are. In some cases, it'll probably be stunningly beautiful, right? Depending on where you are. But in like cities and dense areas and airports and stuff, you'll be disillusioned by it, and you'll actually like it could traumatize you if you see everything and like the actual entities that are hanging out and working through people and the NPCs and the synthetics and the clones and like everything. Like you'll be if you don't have any sort of understanding or baseline understanding of all the possibilities of what is even occurring on this planet, then you will be traumatized by it. So going into it, if you know that all this stuff is possible, you'll be able to identify it like, okay, I've seen enough. Like I don't need to know. But you have that ability and you can turn it on whenever it comes time, because we do encounter people when we do need to see their true intentions and what's working through them or whatever the case is. Then we can activate it and then we're shown. And then the hard thing is when you're shown, but no one else sees it, and then like you can see something within somebody or within a group or whatever is happening, but you can't explain it to someone else because we're talking about frequencies that aren't perceivable to the everyday person. And it's really this is kind of the fine line we're walking right now. And
Mhm.
as we shift, because one person might think this is a great person, and maybe in their reality or timeline it is, but another person's going to have a completely different experience because they're seeing another energetic layer of that person that isn't perceivable, that is intentionally hidden and concealed. And this is how the manipulation works because these entities and this matrix, like it's not always overt anymore. It is, but it's like the part of the deception is that we have this wool pulled over our eyes and we just can't really see. So once you start to see it and other people can't, that's where we're getting into this predicament, right? It's like, what is happening? How do you not see what I'm seeing? But I think once you start tapping into that ability more and more, you create a new baseline for yourself, and then you don't even realize it, but you slowly just shifted to where you're seeing. It's like almost like you're climatizing yourself for
Mhm.
this new world or whatever, you know. So I don't even know where I was going with that, but I hope it made sense.
Well, yeah, no, that does make sense. So I have a couple. So in terms of like just when the veil goes away, then you can see things. It's been a long time since I've had a massage, and a couple weeks ago I did a girls' weekend. So I booked a 90-minute massage because my neck and shoulders are a mess because I have a bulging disc in my neck. But at any rate, so my point is, it was a treat for myself. I wanted to completely zone out and work on my muscles. The first 20 minutes of it, I'm dealing with the masseuse's aunt who's in spirit, who is like ranting. Like she wasn't like ranting, but she was just like, look at her. She kept saying like, they always said we look so much alike. And oh, that's my niece. And, she's telling me all these things. I'm like, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm getting a massage. Like, just leave me alone.
Right.
And then finally, I'm like, why are you even here? Like, why are you even here? I don't no offense, but I don't care that she looks like her and the family. And she's like, well, and then she told me what was going on in their family life. And,
Mhm.
my ethics is I'll never tell anybody what I'm seeing. They haven't asked me, right? That is my ethics. Nobody has asked me to read into that. So I told her, Aunt, I'm not going to tell her this. She has not asked me for this information. Because those are my ethics. I don't believe those mediums that like go up to people in the streets and say, oh, you're gonna I that just I can't do. I won't do that.
Right, right, right.
So at any rate, so like that's a part of I wish I could have just had my full 90 minutes and not been spending 20 minutes trying to get this aunt to stop yakking in my in
Right,
my in
right.
my head. But like on the flip side, I think where we're shifting and where we're going with this is I've started to help businesses with hiring, right? So anyone can send you in their resume, but they're send me because I can read photos. So they'll send me the their photo and they won't send me the resume. All they're say is what type of a person, and I just look at how they are as like what's the best environment for them to work at? Where are you going to get the best out of them? Where do they thrive in terms of work? And so I've been doing consulting for businesses with that. And then and I help out my husband's company. He's in a board meeting and I get these photos of people that are around the table and he's like, read them. Like in terms of business, right? Because they have energetically agreed to do business with my husband. And so I'll do a quick swap. I'm like, double check their contract.
Right.
Like they're be good to work with, but they're probably going to blame other people. And like I'll just get these measures like they're going to blame other people if they don't do well. So watch out for that. So like that's kind of the information that I'll get from these, but it's helpful, right?
Hmm.
Because anybody can just put a glamorous resume out there. But if you're not learning how to read into the energy and read into people's energy, like that's
Right.
the true purpose, the true meaning. And it is like in terms of the business, how I use it is you want to get the best out of people's time and know how their energy works the greatest. So for instance, this one guy, he was onboarding this person to come in and kind of like run and take over but she lived at a distance and I wrote them and I said, listen, amazing for the job, she's going to be fabulous, you're going to need to do in person to onboard her, which mean like to give her all the information. I said, if you do this over Zoom, she's going to go into like her masking, right? To like, oh, I'm very professional in this. And she's not going to absorb it. She's going to work best if you do it in person, like take her out for a breakfast, take her out for a lunch, and just do it through a conversation. And then it's going to like, she'll remember it and she'll absorb it. And so this company did. They flew out and spent 4 days with her where she lived, and they just did all like lunch and breakfast meetings to give her all the information, and it
Yeah.
worked.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like this is how like the benefit of being able to use our energy in that way.
Right. Well, a few things that come to mind listening to you say that. For one, the Zoom thing and putting on the mask, it's funny. It just reminded me of something that's a complete side note, but I know people will find it entertaining. I saw something online where this company did a work party, like I don't know, it was like a Friday afternoon work party or whatever it was, where people came to the party dressed as they would for a Zoom meeting. And it's like guys with coats, like suit coats and gym shorts, and like like the lower half of everybody is just like pajamas, and the upper half was dressed up. And it's I just thought it was hilarious because that's so true. It's so true. But it's I want to go back to this whole like the girl earlier. You were telling the story about like how her whole quantum, or what did you call it? Quantum immortality.
Quantum
Like
immortality. Yeah.
yeah, so how her reality shifted, how that happened for me. Okay, we can talk about like that it happens, but okay, why is it happening? How is it happening? That's something that I don't think that most people understand. Not saying I understand, but I do realize that, the timelines, the concept of timelines has entered the conversation, right? It's entered the playing field. It's part of the game now. So we have to understand this is coming up collectively for a reason. And and that's hard for people to wrap their head around if they're new to this stuff. Like what's a timeline, And like even describing what a timeline is difficult, but essentially it's just like these other realities that play out and eventually fizzle away because there's not enough energy driving them because you've already like put your energy into this other decision. That's one way of looking at it. Collectively, you can create a timeline if through a consensus reality, if enough people believe in something, then that reality that can exist for a certain amount of time until if there's really no truth based on its inception, then it's going to fizzle out and it's going to collapse. And that's kind of what we're seeing happening right now. So people like your reality, like everything's like these airwaves, right? And if you kind of don't know what you're doing in life, you're gonna like accidentally just get caught in one of these airwaves, and you're gonna go, down this flat Earth airwave, or you're gonna go whatever it is, and you don't even know how you ended up there, but you're like, oh, all these other people kind of agree with me, and this is my reality. Well, if there's no actual like truth, if there's nothing like strong that's that reality, if there's no real strong foundation for that timeline, it's going to eventually fizzle out. And as it fizzles out, which I don't know how to describe the science behind it, but that's when things start to shift and change. So you're not actually going to remember things the same way because you might have been on the flat earth timeline and you might have somehow got caught into like pulled into this other airwave and now you're on this timeline and things that happen on this flat earth timeline no longer are part of your memory bank because you've literally shifted toward the other version of you never believed in flat earth in the first place. So then you're in that body and you're recovering memories from this other version of yourself that's always been here, alongside you simultaneously. And then there's like, we talk about it on a massive scale. There's actually entities involved that actually are creating timelines through things like CERN and they're trying to open portals and stuff. And those are actual collapsing timelines because they were like
Artificial.
the dark, yeah, they were created under like nefarious purposes, not just like accidentally by people like slipping into it. Like it was intended to send Earth into a dystopian future. So when those timelines, because it's not just one, it branches out infinitely, right? But there is one, like I would say, main timeline, but it branches out from there. But if you're on any of those and that reality is collapsing, because it is on the world state, like globally it is, then you're going to see like these quantum shifts. Like all of a sudden, this girl has this car accident and she's on this whole other reality because that was like a dystopian timeline or whatever. Like maybe it was this lower timeline and her soul, it wasn't done here. So in some cases, when your soul is done, you're just going to transition, however that looks. But if you're not ready to transition, you'll transition in a different sense onto the positive timeline, this golden age or whatever. I don't know if I'm even being coherent about the way I'm trying to explain this, but
You are. No, I can follow all of this.
right,
Sometimes if I look off, because when I look off when someone's talking, because I'm seeing a picture play out right in front of me.
right.
And so no, I'm following it beautifully. You're explaining it very, very well. I was doing a reading for this woman once, and she was waking up with like feeling just very depleted, could barely go through her day. And she's like, I'm getting tons of sleep. I don't like, there's no reason. Like, she went to the doctor, like, she goes, there's no medical reason why I'm feeling so depleted. What's going on? And so when I fell into that, I saw another version of her in a completely other timeline. That because even though, so we have splintered selves, right? So we have
Hmm.
fractals of selves. And, so maybe each of our fractal, I want to learn this, I want to learn this, I want to learn this, right? Okay, so let's go out into three versions of ourselves and go down those timelines. So for each one of those timelines, and a lot, some of this I've gotten from readings to understanding it, and other parts like the Dolores canon has helped to fill in some of the dots. So we can, okay, so in this version, Abby 102, I want to focus on working on my relationships with friends. Abby 104, all right, we're going to deal with a lot of abuse, and we're going to, go. Abby 102, I think I only need about 5% of my higher self to get through that. Abby 104, you're going to do a lot, so you might need maybe 45% of your energy, right? These are your core energy, like, to get you through it. So what I saw in this session was another version of herself did not allocate enough energy, and so she was siphoning off of version 104, version 102
Right,
to get through 104. And because it's still herself, she wants to be helpful and wants to give, right? But
yeah,
now it's making 102 version, she can't do what she's needing to do.
right,
And then so then we go into, okay, these are like, it wasn't a soul contract, but you need to tell your other self you can't have any more of me,
right. Yeah.
right? And so that's sometimes how things can end up working. I mean, if you want to get even more confused in your brain about how all of this works out. But yeah, there's just, and even just with readings, right? And I talk to readers all the, like, my colleagues all the time. It's not good to look too much far in the future, because every future, like, it's
Right.
never set.
There's,
I can share with you a possibility that I see, it's possible, but every decision that you make, I
yeah.
can't, it may not ever.
So, yeah, this brings up another great point, and this is an ability that I've accidentally realized I could do after reflecting one day. I'm like, dude, can everybody else do this? I don't know. And that's looking down people's timelines,
Mhm,
looking down your timeline, I should say.
mhm,
But you can look down someone else's timeline too. I learned this from Daryl James, if anybody knows who he is. He's a secret space program whistleblower, but it's an ability that, he explained his executive officer could do, and Daryl realized that he could do it. And basically, is if you're tapped into somebody's frequency, you can literally, it's all already happened. Like if you realize time, it's already happened. So you can see how, like, let's just say if it's a partner in your life or a potential partner, business partner, life partner, spouse related, whatever it is, a friend even, you can see if you really want to, you can connect with that person's energy and see how your life will play out with that individual down to very specific things, and you'll know how it ends. And don't second guess yourself. You'll get
mhm,
these intuitive hits along the way, and you'll see, and you'll even see like your life start taking a different direction, and like before you know it, like you're dying with that person, but just by looking down that timeline, like you've lived that whole life, and then and you can see, okay, I don't actually, that doesn't interest me. I don't want to pursue that. So then you can like, you start to do that with other people. And it's kind of scary in a way because it's like, well, am I just like making this up, or is this a real thing that I'm tapping into? And so far, I really do believe it's a real thing that I'm tapping into. And sometimes we meet people where there's a lot of unknowns, and that's the most interesting because that means that person isn't looking into their future that far either. So then there's like you're only going so far, but then there's this unknown, nothing, it hasn't been written yet. And those are the most exciting people I like to get involved with because it's just about being present. The
mhm,
5-year plan is so limiting. If you create a 5-year plan for yourself and you stick to that, you're going to miss out on all these other opportunities that we're trying to get your attention along the way because you've already made up your mind. So it's like focus on what you have to do right now, literally right now. and then do that. And then like it's something as simple as like cleaning your house or whatever. I need to do this because that's clutter in my mind. And until that's done, then the next step will present itself. And then you can just be in the present like that, and you'll be amazed at the way your life, the direction your life will head if you start doing that. And I think it's beautiful. And then along the way, you have to be conscious about your daily decisions that you make. And we all make bad decisions all the time. And I mean, a bad decision can be something as simple as what you decide to eat for breakfast, a movie you decide, whatever. It could be a toxic behavior or an unconscious toxic behavior. It doesn't matter. But the decisions you make every day are you're literally choosing your timeline. Like you can choose like the best possible highest timeline decisions all day long. I'm going to eat this instead of this. I'm going to watch this instead of this. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to honor myself, self-respect. I'm going to say no, I can't go to that party because I know it's going to drain me. Like you can start making these decisions that are, respecting yourself and keep yourself on this higher timeline to where it becomes like your new reality. But you can easily make one decision that's going to pull you into a lower timeline that day. And it's just like impossible to, to to paint a picture of how infinite it actually is and how much it actually spiderwebs out. But it really is something to be conscious of because we literally choose our timeline every day based on our, and then this is like the controllers understand that and the entities and the stuff that's hanging around. Like if you have something that's not cleared, that entity that might not be attached to you, but might just be hanging around, it can influence you in subtle ways that you'll never even understand to go smoke that cigarette or go drink that beer or whatever it is that you're trying that's keeping you on in that lower frequency on that lower timeline. So that's why it's important to like keep yourself clear because otherwise you'll be like subtly manipulated and sometimes your thoughts won't even be your own. But if you can, navigate that and then be conscious and self-aware about every single decision you make, your life will change
Yeah,
instead of making unconscious decisions that keep you trapped in the lower dimensions.
absolutely. So I actually just the past couple days, there's two things I want to bring up. So I kind of made a hard decision past couple days, and in the process of making it, once I put into action to make this change, I suddenly not only began to like physically feel relief, but the moment that I like again, like I made a choice, all of these future potentials, visions started happening for me because I was actively in my decision. So so I'm not so vague. I had an office. I love my office in downtown Charleston. I love my office, but it's just for the past like 6 months, it just hasn't like there's been something there, right? I can't tone in it. I can't channel in it because there's lawyers up above me, and so like I can't play my gong, like and like my Wi-Fi was spotty, right? But I loved the space. I loved having an office, and that's where I could go. But it just really wasn't working out for what I needed it to be, and so I really struggled with it. And I bought all this equipment and furniture for it, right? So that was my struggle, right? That was all ego,
Mhm.
like 3D
Right.
based. As I'm loading up, there was the second load, the second day, second load filled to the brim. It was actually in the car was all of my crystals, all of my bowls, like all of my energetic tools. As I was driving home, I just all these images started dropping in, and I saw a larger space, and I saw all these big glass windows, and I
Hmm.
could hear the toning. Like so all of so by that choice, it was moving into another possibility, right?
Right.
That
Hmm.
I was trying to hold on to because again, the devil we know, right? Like I
Right.
thought I wanted this, but by making that and then just allowing it to flow, I didn't know what was going to come after that. It just isn't
Yep.
working.
Yep.
And then so by doing that, it opened a window.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that you just nailed it. Yeah. And it's also important because people are like, I've explained this to other people. They're like, well, how do you plan like a vacation a year out or something? Like you can pick and choose because logistically some things require you to make a decision now, like for the Egypt trip, let's say. And that's fine. And you can like that can be like an anchor point on the timeline, but that's not your entire timeline, right? You're still allowing yourself the freedom to make decisions along the way if you confidently know you're supposed to be at this place or want to go to that place. And if you can't like commit to it, then that's telling you something. And it's just something else to bring up.
I actually I texted you this the other day, and it was after I sent it to you. I'm like, oh wow, that's actually it's. I wrote, my inner child made a lot of decisions for 2025, and now my current self has to do the work, right?
Right.
So there are things, and so I'll just announce it right now. I'm going to Cambodia. I said, yep, I'm gonna do that. I'm running a retreat in Cambodia for a week. And I agreed to another huge event, um, going with humpback whales. I said, "Yep, I'll do that date." Right? Um, I don't know how all of it's going to work out,
Mm,
but I trust that it is.
right.
And
Right.
it's just like, and so now I'm in the mental place of I'm excited to see how all of it's going to line up and work out. And it's that, like, that trust aspect, because
Right.
my inner child was giddy, like, right, my higher
Yeah.
self's like, yes, do this. And again, like we were talking in the very beginning, it's like getting, we need to, like, get into places in the earth, go and see things that haven't been experienced, right? And just
Right.
holding that space for it.
Yeah. Yep.
Experience. It's like all about experience. So I don't know how it's going to work out, but I trust it is.
Right. It's beautiful too. I mean, it's interesting too, like the other side of that coin is we can kind of trap ourselves in a way. Like this is like if somebody, everybody, uh, I don't know a good example. Like let's just say there's a party planned or a certain holiday coming up and there's like a party planned and like nobody actually really wants to go to this place or really do it, but everybody you want to hang out with your friends, but it seems like the best option and like, okay, well, you know, do I everybody kind of forces each other into a decision about something. And I'm like, is that even like our in our highest interest to do that in general at all in the first place? And I find myself like really struggling to commit to things like that. I'm like, because I don't know where I'm going to be that morning. Like, I almost like to be like, I'll wake up and decide if that sounds like energetically where I want to put my energy and give my energy that day. But committing so far in advance to like things like that, I think is like can be limiting in a way. Like
Mhm.
if we just honor, like we understand we want to like get together, but it doesn't have to be this like rigid thing. Like let's just let it flow and like what I don't know. If everybody's on that same page, it works. But some people like need an itinerary, right? Because that's just how their mind works. So I get it. Maybe that's just my personality type. So, and that's what works for me, but it won't work for someone else. I actually, you know, that is probably very true. But still, I think the whole reason we're even having this conversation is just to give people things to think about. And like, oh, that never occurred to me. Like, I don't
Yeah.
actually have to commit to that work party or whatever, you know.
Yeah. So I work a lot. I actually work exactly like you do. I'm very much so. I kind of I struggle committing because I don't know how I'm going to feel at the time. Um,
Right,
and sometimes I can get really excited because you caught me in an excitable moment. And then, a week later, I'm like, oh shit,
right,
sorry. But so for instance, we're doing Egypt. We're going to go to Egypt. And the one thing that I really agreed upon with our Egyptologist, Maher, who's leading it, is he said, I have an itinerary, but it's very loose because we wake up and we see where Egypt wants us to go.
right.
Right?
I
Because
love that.
energy shifts. And that, when he said that, I knew, yes, this is exactly in alignment.
Yes.
Um, because especially when we're going into some of these sacred, older areas, there are land guard again, like we're going back to talk about entities. There are land guardians there are portals there are energy, like, gateways open, gateways close, and you need to be able to feel into that. It
Right,
can't be a force, like, nope, we said we're going there at 10 and we're going to be there at 10. No, it did, like, so we can
right.
feel into it and move that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on in the other dimensions that we don't consider when we make decisions, you know. So I love the fact that, you know, that's a perfect template to, you know, to follow. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, even so Craig and I were talking in Grafton, going back to your retreat, your conference. There was an area, and I just kept walking because I'll close my eyes and just, like, I'll use my body as a barometer, like, okay, where am I being led to? And it kept going over here, and I'm like, yep, nope, energy's here, energy here. So we were looking for Sasquatch energy. And we got to these trees and I could feel them. I'm like, oh, we need to come in here. And I walked into this tree line. And the minute I stepped into it, I heard, you didn't get permission.
Yep.
Like, boom. And I immediately stepped back because it was, when I walked in, I could feel an energy, like,
Right.
it's like a, so I stepped back. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And so I grounded myself, got my energy into an aligned space, and then
Right.
asked for permission.
Right.
So we entered, and it's just kind of being in that conscious awareness again, like so many
Right.
different energies are around us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, you always got to remember that. And that goes back to your point earlier. Like we forget these things. We have to remind ourselves that we have these abilities. And we forget that we need to ask permission when we're entering the Sasquatch realm, you know. And
Mhm.
I think that it's, you know, it's also a telltale sign that you're on the right path anyway, then when you get that reminder, because you're in a frequency enough to even receive that message, to even be able to perceive their reality. But
Mhm.
like a hunter, like he'll never get the have the awareness that, oh, I'm supposed to ask permission to be in here, therefore he's never going to have a mystical encounter. He might, like, there's always the odd chance and the variable that something was supposed to happen inevitably anyway to him, or like he's gonna encounter like a rogue Sasquatch, that whatever. There's all the possibilities, right? But there's never, it's not always, it's never going to be that mystical experience that you can create, and you know, unless you understand that, like, oh, this is a different realm I'm entering. I need to ask permission. This isn't necessarily my home. This is
Mhm.
their home, you know, and I don't want people to barge in my house. So let's, you know, be fair about this.
Yeah, I love it. I love the synchronicities of how people come into your life for certain moments. And we hired a repairman to come to our house, and we
I
were
just
just
got,
we were
sorry, I just got an amazing analogy, but go ahead.
no, go ahead, Joe, share it, share it.
Well, so somebody came into my life recently, and then they came out and left as soon as they came in. It was a whole long story, but a lot of healing occurred, and I just heard, like, when you said repairman, I just saw that person. I'm like, oh, that was like a repairman for me. It's like but it didn't show up as a like a physical repairman. It's just funny. Sorry.
That's interesting. No, that's fine. No, I'm
Yeah.
glad you shared it. Well, he came in and he just said, oh, oh, I'm actually close to retirement. My brother and I, all we want to do is we want to go Bigfoot hunting. That's what we want to do in our retirement. And so I said, oh, okay. Well, why don't you come sit with me for a little bit and let's discuss this? And so we sat on my back deck for an hour, and I just said, if you go to hunt them, you're never going to find them. Like, and he didn't want to hurt anybody. He just want to have encounters, right?
Right. But you can change the frequency of that word
Mhm.
itself.
And that's what I was telling him. I
Yeah.
go, I said, so you're wanting to have an experience with them. And so I just went through this whole thing of, about energy and, how to work with them, and that they are very real. They're not, some animal that you would go and hunt, and they're very spirit. So anyway, so like, I feel like he came into my life at that moment to be able to share a
Yeah.
different reality with them.
Yeah, I agree. And he probably was ready to receive that information, or he wouldn't have been there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the
It's really
repairman in our lives. Yeah. Interdimensional repairman. Um, yeah,
yeah.
that's funny. There was something I was going to say, but it doesn't matter.
I would love to know. Okay, so this has happened twice now, and then I know we can begin to wrap this up. I was talking with Sherry Divbin and Laura Van Tyne about this. So I've had two occurrences now, and I would love to know if you've had anything similar. And anyone listening, I would love for you to share if you had similar. So I know that there's a lot of different things that we're doing while we sleep, right? And some of us remember, some of us don't. I've had two occurrences now, and this one was a little more recently, and the other one was months ago. So the first one I had was I was just light, just pure light, and it was I saw the outside. It was a trailer, and I was just light. I went into it, and I turned left down the hall, and the door was shut, and I knew it was a bedroom. It was in the middle of the night, and I could hear um a father doing something to his little girl. And
Mm.
so I just put all of my effort into the doorknob, and I got it to, like, again, just using pure energy, right? Just and the knob opened and the door opened a bit, right? So then the sound was coming out into the hallway. And then I went down the hallway and I even saw like the shag carpet in the hallway. Like all is so much detail. And then I went into the bedroom and the mom was sleeping. I could see her there. And I went up next to her face and I went, wake up, wake up. And I just said that. And then the minute I saw her like to begin to stir, I just, I went out. I was gone. And so the next morning, I just asked, why did I see that? It was so real. What was that about? And the answer came, I saw an image and they were just light cords coming up and they all had different colors. And they said, sometimes this is the work we do. We answer prayers.
Mm,
And I could see each of these little light cards were little prayers. They gave me the image of this little girl praying for somebody, for her mom to find out what her dad was doing.
right. Wow.
And it just ended with, sometimes this is the work that we do.
Hmm.
And so that was months and months ago. And then about 2 weeks ago, again, middle of the night here. So it would have been morning time in Europe. I know I was in France. And this woman was in a kitchen and her husband was abusing her. And for a moment, I was like coming into her body and experience, but like the minute I would come in, I was helping her see it from a higher perspective. I was helping her see the higher potentiality of like what life could look like when you leave, right? That's what I was doing. I was like giving her glimpses of a life without him. And then I was jumping back and I was saying things to her like, get out. You need to get out, right? And
Right.
so, and it felt very much so like when we say, oh, my guide just heard this. I just heard my guide say this to me.
Yeah.
So this would,
Exactly.
three in the morning for me, 4 in the morning, it would have been, 9 a.m. over in Europe.
Yep.
Is this the work that we're doing
Yeah.
sometimes? Like sometimes when we say like, oh, my guide came and like I heard a voice come and talk to me next to my bed last night.
Could have been somebody here in this reality, just they were dreaming or in that, and they were working in the astral. I
Yeah.
think absolutely that's the case. Yeah, I mean an amazing story, by the way,
Yeah.
and it felt I got chills. I mean, there's truth to that, and I think it brings in the question like, who are our guides really? Like we always want to label them as a Pleiadian or somebody, but what if it's just another person who we have no idea who they are that answered the call?
Mhm.
And they just showed up in the right time and maybe didn't even realize that they were consciously doing it, but like you, like it was just happening in this dream state. Like part of you understands, but like Abby 1.0, didn't understand. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've actually experienced similar where I've definitely like encountered and interacted with other people, but not to that capacity
Mhm.
at all, actually. That's it's a pretty amazing story.
For me, it just feels it hones in. We're all one,
Yeah.
literally. I mean, all of us, we're all here just to help everybody, to see them and to hear them and help. Again, like there's no separatization
Hmm. Right.
of us, of
Yeah.
energy.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, on that note, thank you so much for coming on. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me and Merry
Is
Christmas to everyone who's listening to this and Happy New Year. And
there anything that you do around the holidays that you enjoy to do? Do you have any traditions?
not so much anymore. Like I kind of like talk about separating. I've kind of like just separated from the energy of the holidays in the sense that I used to be like so connected to the facade of it all. And now I really appreciate it, but on a different level for different reasons. So I don't do the traditional stuff like decorations and all that stuff. And I very much look forward to seeing my family and spending that time and stuff. But there's no major traditions. The one fun thing that my grandfather did whenever he was alive that I've continued is he had a mystery gift every year. He just brought it over and the whole family guesses all day. So he like you put in like a quarter or whatever you put money in to make a guess, and he throughout the day he gives clues, and then by the end of the day, everybody's got all their guesses on the sheet, and then if you got it right, you win the gift and the money inside. So I've continued that tradition, just because I told him I would whenever he was on his deathbed. Like I don't know why it came out, but we all got a chance to go in and say one last thing to him,
Yeah.
when he was in hospice. And I don't know why that came out. I told him I would continue that tradition. So I've just made it a point to do that. And it's fun. Everybody loves it. People love like because all day long you just like, all right, another clue, and everybody's all ears and people are putting their guesses down. It's just fun for everybody. So
I
that's
love
the
that.
only tradition I even really
I
do.
love yeah, I've never had any I don't really do religion, so I have no religious, back
Right.
it for anything. It's more always about like I love watching movies. I love watching Christmas. I'm literally
Yeah.
once we're done here, I'm doing a Hunger Games marathon.
Oh, nice,
I'm
nice.
making Christmas cookies. Speaking of, not like high vibrational choices, but I am going to make Christmas cookies. And
You can
Hunger
alchemize every decision you make, though. That's another point to that. Seriously, like you
No, I'm
can,
going. No, I only did
yeah,
that because I have finally started doing that. I have finally started doing that because I have been so focused on making on point decisions because again, like I'm really working on getting a very clear system for Egypt. Like, I mean, it should be for always, but for Egypt, I
right,
really am to handle the energy. So I'm like, okay, sometimes life happens, sometimes we don't make great decisions. So I've been putting my hands over everything and I've been
right,
putting the intention into it of this is aligning to the highest vibration, the highest frequency, and it's going
right.
to go on my body for healing.
Yeah, and that's something I just came out of my mouth, but I don't even do all the time. Like I don't remember. But it's so true. And it goes to what I was saying earlier about, being making those bad decisions that put you on a lower timeline if
Yeah.
you're unconsciously making them. But if you're like consciously like, you know what, I want to have this cookie. I know it's not good for me, but you can literally alchemize it. And the same thing, I did the same thing with a beer one time when I was in Mexico. I hadn't drinking in months, a year. And I was like, I just want a Corona on the beach or whatever it was. I just want to do it. And I literally charged the beer, restructured it, and just mentally like re-alchemized it
Yeah.
and gave it a positive. I said, allow me to have a positive interaction and relationship with this beer and not the negative that I've had in the past. And it was amazing. I didn't feel like it knocked me down at all. So,
That's
um,
great.
I think we can do that. We just have to remember that we can do it, you know?
Yeah. Again, it's remembering that we can do it.
Right.
That's the
Right. Name that. That's the name of this episode.
name that.
Remember that you can do it.
You can do it.
Right.
It's very simple. I actually talked to Craig about this in the podcast too. And again, it's like one of those, it's so simple. I know I can do it. I did it for like 2 weeks and then I stopped. I don't know why I stopped, but it came very clearly because again, I was working on health and I encoded in our avatar. I do really believe these are just energetic avatars, right? Encoded in each avatar is a highest potential, a highest
Mhm.
potentiality of both physique and health. And so my higher self was showing that you can just work on recoding it, right? Like I want my body to get back to that highest potential. And I was making an effort every single day in the morning when I was getting ready, literally putting like bringing in coding. It was like golden white coding down and sending it to all of my cells and realigning them to a highest potential. In those 2 weeks, I dropped an entire pant size. My skin on my face was so clear. My eyes, the whites of my eyes became so clear. Like I was seeing very quick, vivid results
Right.
doing that. Why did I stop doing that? I don't know. Like it's again, it's so simple and it works.
Right. Well, your subconscious mind, it starts whenever it starts to be reprogrammed, when you start to be reprogrammed, it almost tells us like it almost acts as like an error in the system. And it's like, oh wait, this can't happen. It's not familiar, like something's wrong. So
Yeah.
you'll like subconsciously course correct, even though it's not a correction in a good way. It seems like it feels like it's correcting itself to what you're familiar with, to what it knows how to do. So that's why I think that happens. Like we start these diets, we start these workouts and all this stuff, and like things almost start to get too good, and that's unfamiliar territory, and it's essentially a trauma response. We don't know we're doing it, but we'll somehow, on some crazy subconscious level, just tell ourselves to stop doing it. And then we'll like slowly start like choosing what we're familiar with that really didn't get us anywhere in the first place, but here we are again. And then you got to pull yourself back out. And every time you can look at it as like 3 steps forward, 1 step back. So I mean that's very much what the whole awakening process is, because you're learning and unlearning and learning and unlearning, you know, and then slipping back. It's just this whole process. But I think ultimately you're like going up if we're gonna, you know, put this into like a hierarchy system. Um, but I think inevitably, like if you're on that path, like you can't really do anything wrong. Just be aware enough to realize that, just be self-aware enough to understand what your decisions are doing and how they're affecting you.
Yeah, agree completely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Again, what website is it for your conference?
Journey to truth.online. And you can find everything we do over there, but including the conference. So,
Perfect.
and I do want to encourage people to follow us over on X. We're kind of breaking into new territory over there, and we've been hosting some spaces, and it's been working really well. And I think it's the next step for us. It is. I've gotten so much guidance to go over there, and we have gained so many new followers. We're reaching an entirely new audience. You know, we built up our community on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook and Insta, you know, all that that whole world. It was amazing and it served us. But I'm like, we're kind of like I have to admit, we were getting this echo chamber, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't working anymore. Like it's becoming stagnant. So we broke into this new uncharted territory over on X, and things are flowing for the podcast again. It's moving again. It wasn't getting stagnant. Things are lining up. I'm like, okay, that was the right choice, you know. And like Elon's not wrong when he says it's the town square of the world. Because if you want to know what's happening and where everybody is and where the whistleblowers are going and where like disclosure is happening, it's over there. So I encourage people to come follow Journey to Truth over on X. We would really appreciate that. So
And I'm gonna say something, and I don't care if it triggers people, but I'm gonna say it. Um, Elon is not who Elon was years ago. Read into his energy. It is
it's
something,
shifted.
it
Yeah.
is completely shifted. There's so much light in it now. You know, and years ago I really was on the fence, and I could feel, I actually talked to my husband about this. I go, I can feel there's this internal struggle of, do I want to go like AI? Do I want to be human? Like I could feel it for almost like 2 years. He kept going back and forth. I'm like, oh, I don't know. 2 years ago, something completely shifted. A year ago, it's like pure light. It's been for a year. It's just pure light. It's just light.
Right.
It
Yeah.
feels good and it feels easy. There's like, is when I feel into that is, so people who are like, oh, he's evil, like you're like still looking at old energy, like
Right. Yeah,
take out
that's
absolute.
why we can never freeze people in time,
Yeah,
because we they can only show up that way in our life when we do that.
yeah,
And when enough people collectively agree that this person's bad, then it's gonna create that energy, right? But all you have to do is shift your perspective and understand, like, yeah, okay, people need to be held accountable, and
mhm,
justice should be served where due. And you know, I understand all that, but as you know, to just put the cherry on top of this whole conversation, if we can shift like we've been talking about the whole time, like so can other people like Elon and Trump and world leaders and people, like they can do the same thing and they shift timelines as well. And we're seeing different versions of them all the time too. And we just have to remember that everything's malleable. I mean, and if we freeze these people in these situations in time, it's the only way they're going to show up in our life. And we're actually holding back the entire process of the
yeah,
awakening,
yeah,
because you're not allowing that person's space to heal their energetic signature, whatever their soul chose to do in that moment for whatever lesson they had to learn. You have to understand that what was happening, and it was nothing else and nothing more. And there's lessons to be learned for everybody, and just don't freeze them in time. Don't freeze yourself in time. Don't
mhm.
tell yourself stories about yourself that aren't true anymore, because we're all growing and we're breaking free. This conversation will never end if you don't hit end. So,
I know. Sorry. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming on. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, however people celebrate. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
of course, bye everybody.